So let's start.
5 stages of empire is basically this idea that humans self-order themselves into regionalization, ascending to empire, maturity, overextension, and decline. And they're linear in this function. They go through a civil war and lateralize. They algorithmically expand through this process. They reach maturity. They start to throw out their lateral thinkers and replace them with more linear, large institutional governments. They roll over the top. They lose adaptation, but they're still a huge monopoly, so they seem unchallenged. They suffer a major reverse and they collapse. Now, back in 2002, when I formulated this idea and I started to speak about it, of course, this was just, there wasn't anything like it. There have since been some people that have similarly followed these ideas because they received books I sent them, but we won't talk about that. There's an awful lot of details on the site you can read. But what I really want to describe to you is human societies create periods of coherence, which I call anti-entropy. They peak and then they create loss of coherence and they become entropic. And each one of these cycles is depicted by a type of conflict because not all wars are similar. There are various types: wars of expansion, wars of contraction, civil wars. They all have a different character which marks them on that cycle. And indeed, I study every empire in history and they all did similar things, irrespective of technology. But there was one problem, and that was Western civilizations had shorter duration. I didn't really understand why that could be until I realized that in fact they were the pistons of a bigger system. And what the West really was, or the Western Christian world as we know it, is a super system comprising of nations, from the Portuguese, the Spanish, and the Dutch, the French, the British, which I hate to say this to our American cousins, was the greatest empire we've ever seen in terms of pure outright power and control. America over here, and Germany tried twice, once as a Christian empire and then as an atheist empire to challenge. And in fact, our peak of this Western Christian world was the onset of the First World War. The Second World War was part 2, and they started to decline. And this period of the Cold War is in fact taking place in the declining period of this super Western Christian empire. And America was without doubt the last of the Western Christian empires. And I concluded that 9/11 in fact was the beginning of its decline. Of course, a lot of people, when I went on television and talked about what it represented, laughed at me. Today, less so. In fact, the track of the past 20 years has been frighteningly along the lines of the discussion of what decline looked like. And we're talking about a shift to the importance of self over collective, talking about increased narcissism, contraction of the idea that the borders of empire are no longer recognized and they're allowed to be frayed and impinged upon. Every single quality of decline we've seen in the American Western system.